Welcome back. Joining us now is Tony Arterburn of Wise Wolf Gold, and he has set up davidknight.gold to let him know that you're coming through us. So you can go either way. You can go davidknight.gold to take you to Tony Arterburn. He can help you to gradually accumulate gold, which is a wise way to do it. Everything has become so volatile, the big swings happening all the time. So getting it over a period of time is a wise way to accumulate this at Wise Wolf. And he has Wolfpack that you can sign up and set up a particular savings program to extend, just budget a certain amount that you want to set aside in gold each month. That's a great way to accumulate. Thank you, Tony, for joining us today.
Well, it's great to be back, David. Good to see you. I'm wearing shoes that fit, by the way. I buy my own shoes. I've got some moccasins. They're nice and comfortable. I don't have to impress anybody except for my dog Beans. She
got
does
them golden slippers.
And golden slippers.
Oh, them golden slippers. Well, a lot of people are looking at this chaos, and right away we had gold shoot way up over the weekend. On Monday it was way up, and then the American markets open, as Gerald Slinty said, goes down. Same thing happened with oil. Oil was way up because people were reacting to the reality of it, and then apparently there's some manipulation that's happening in the American market somehow. The plunge protection team or whatever, or this spike protection team, I guess, trying to make sure that gold and oil don't spike. Nevertheless, the reality is there. It's the same type of thing that we've been talking about for a long time. When you look at what the federal government is doing with debt and deficit, and when you look at the inflation and the money creation, all the rest of the stuff, those are real factors that are going to have an effect. They can manipulate it in the short term. They can try to play games with it, but it's going to win out in the end. And so I went back and looked at it. I thought, there's so many parallels between 1973 and the OPEC oil embargo. And I was kind of curious as to how gold had taken off. And it took a while before it started taking off because everybody was focused on oil. And we see that happening again this time. It was the average price in 1973, even with the OPEC oil embargo, was $97. And but then by the time we got to 1979, it went from $225 to $560 something that year. And then by the beginning of 1980, it jumped up to $800 and then went back down to like the 560 level. After that. But that's kind of the pattern that we're looking at. An 8.5 time, the peak was 8.5 times larger than where it was even after the embargo had started. And so I'm looking at this and thinking, well, if history rhymes, we could be looking at something that's like 8 to 9 times higher in a couple of years as this stuff is percolating through, because gold was reacting not just to the immediate oil spike, but it was reacting to the fact that it had to percolate through the system. And we're going to see the effects of the oil price increase percolate through the system. And the inflation and the stagflation that was happening with all that was percolating through. And so it may take a while, but we're seeing articles here on Kitco. One guy said, well, $6,000. Another guy says $10,000. But if it went up anywhere close to what it did in 1973, from 1973 to 1980, it'd be up to $40,000, $45,000. It's crazy. And of course,
I think
past
you're
performance
right to point that out. There's
Yeah.
similarities between those timelines. And you're also right to point out there's some sort of plunge protection team here in the U.S. when the financial sector trying to suppress these prices that are running away from us, the price of gold and the price of crude oil. As a matter of fact, I was spending some time with a friend of mine I've known for over 30 years, who's now a high up executive in an oil drilling company. He travels all over the world. This is a very smart guy. And we were watching in real time the foreign markets as they opened up on Sunday, what the prices of crude were. And he just looked at me and said, I've been doing this for 25 years. He's like, I've never seen anything like this. This has never happened. This percentage and jump in the price of crude that fast has never happened. And he said it may just start running away where they can't stop it, where it's going to get to $200 a barrel. He said that's a real possibility.
Yeah.
So given that and his knowledge on that, I looked at the markets as they opened up. You're exactly right. But the difference is, David, if you go back to the 70s, 1973 was the last year that the United States ran a trade surplus. We never ran a trade surplus again. After that, it was trade deficits into the trillions. And that's a massive transfer of wealth that went to places like China. But at the end of the 70s, you're right, gold was near $600 an ounce and then hit $800 an ounce in 1980. But you had the ability for the United States and the financial sector to suppress that. And they did. They raised interest rates to the teens. There was a lot of financial maneuvering to take focus away from the loss of purchasing power of the dollar. And they used that system for a long, and it worked for a long time. They can't do that anymore.
Right.
The debt of the U.S. in 1980 was $1 trillion, and it took us, from the beginning of our history in 1776 to 1979, 80 to get there. Now we do $1 trillion every 90 days or so, and you and I have covered that. So I don't think they have the ability to suppress that runaway gold price anymore like they did in 1980. And you're right, the predictions of $6,000 and $10,000 gold, I don't think that's off the mark at all, given our current economic climate. Last week, we talked about, and again, I looked all over to try to see if any major network covered this, but you and I talked about it. The dollar got surpassed by gold as the world's reserve asset.
That's right.
And we've talked about that for years. And it was always number one was the dollar, but because of the massive accumulation by central banks of physical gold, and then the repricing going into 5,000 plus, that creates a holding that gold is higher than the dollar and the reserve holdings of the central banks. So we've crossed a lot of boundaries with de-dollarization and the world monetary system. So there's no way they can suppress what's truly happening, which is de-dollarization across the board.
That's right. As a matter of fact, this article that's talking about $6,000 gold said, well, you don't have to beat the U.S. militarily. All you have to do is beat the bond market. Heavy reliance on U.S. dollars by foreign nations that are concurrently dependent on imported energy. And when all oil price spikes and the dollar strengthens, foreign entities are forced into a difficult position. He points out that they have to have energy, they have to have food, they have to have these commodities. And so they will sell their dollar assets, starting with treasuries, because they're the deepest and the most liquid, to essentially buy oil. The dynamic creates a cycle where foreign nations effectively use the U.S. bond market to finance their energy deficits, driving yields higher. And so that's what it starts to become a cycle, feedback cycle with that as well. And so it's going to put pressure on them more pressure on them to dump their treasury bills, which they already don't like because of the actions of both Biden with his sanctions and Trump continuing those sanctions and adding tariffs and other things like that. So people are already trying to move away because we are the mad hegemon. It's out there. Sounds like some kind of a Pokemon thing, the mad hegemon that's out there. And so everybody's trying to pull back away from this anyway, but they'll have to do it out of necessity. So time is really on Iran's side. And they've thought about this from a strategic standpoint, which obviously the planners in the Pentagon never thought about anything other than we have the most planes and the most bombs, and we can, the kind of stuff that you hear Pete Hegseth boasting about all the time.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of the von Schlieffen plan from World War I with the Germans. They had all this time, decades to draw this thing up. They were always looking into the best way to use troop movements and whatever. They're trying to keep up with technology. And it wasn't even about any sort of real goals other than just defeating something. But they just kept drawing up this plan and drawing up this plan. And finally, it got into action, the von Schlieffen plan in World War I. And they thought it was about a quick victory. And of course, you fast forward, 4+ years, and we just had the great Civil War of the West, and millions died, and it's a wasteland, just an utter carnage and evil. Mm-hmm. So, these military types, when they have this,
and it's also the aggressors too, isn't it? It's like the people who started off, they always want a blitzkrieg or something, right?
That's exactly right. Like the Lightning War. Shock and awe. Remember shock and awe? I followed behind shock and awe. Didn't shock and awe very much in effect. I can attest to that. There was I think a delusion behind this type of thinking, and it's demonic in my opinion. They always have some arrogance or hubris behind them that the rest of us are just we don't think this way. I'm looking at, I don't see any upside. I mean, how can you not convince me that this is just some sort of humiliation ritual for chaos and like we're being destroyed from within with bad policy? Does anybody really think that we're going to win this in some way? And what is winning when the world markets, how fragile this system is? You look at the price of crude; it's going to destroy whatever. If you had any economic growth or any sort of progress,
That's right.
it's being destroyed right now.
That's right.
How long is it going to take to recover?
War Pete thinks we're going to win this because he doesn't think about anything other than destruction and death. And what a clown he is! I saw
just a clown.
I saw, a couple of retired colonels and generals. Gregor was one of them, and another guy, not in one interview, but in a couple of different ones. And they were saying, "Yeah, look at this press briefing that's being given by War Pete and by Dan Kane, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff." And he said, when Dan Kane gets up there, he starts giving the standard presentation. Well, we got this many planes and we sunk this many ships and all the rest of a lot of the stuff that's kind of like what War Pete does. But he says, I've sat through those briefings, through these different wars we've had, Vietnam and Iraq and all the rest of the stuff, and it's meaningless. This is like Robert McNamara's body count. It really doesn't mean anything in the bigger picture of things. And they've lost the bigger picture, as you point out.
Well, there's a lot of echoes of McNamara and Rumsfeld here, but we've reached a new level of stupid. We're in a new, and I'm sorry, it is terrifying. This is the Secretary of War. I mean, you renamed it, you own it, and you're right, a Secretary of War crimes. I mean, this just to start off the war by killing, 177 members of a girls' school in Iran. Yeah. That's confirmed at antiwar.com, and that's been confirmed. Yeah. They can deny it all they want, but that's what they did.
That's right.
And this is just...
and more importantly, Tony, they don't have the decency to apologize for it. And they don't have the respect for the intelligence of the American people to even come up with a plausible denial, right? That's what Trump was doing. He's, tomahawks. Everybody's got tomahawks. Iran's got tomahawks. I'm sure Iran did that to their own people. That kind of stupidity. And, our missiles are accurate. Well, if you're saying it was a Tomahawk, then that's an accurate missile. Like I said when I was talking about this earlier in the week, I had a friend who was in the military, and he said, we talk about the cruise missiles. We can pick which window of the Kremlin we want to put it through. That may have been a little bit of an exaggeration, but not by much. And so he says, everybody's got Tomahawks. Absolute lie. I mean, they don't even sell those to Israel. And then he proceeds from there. There's the same kind of lies we saw in Minnesota. They have no respect for our intelligence. And why should they? People voted for them.
Well, it's all based off a lie, whether or not they intentionally did it or they just skipped over the fact that they're doing their due diligence of what target. Both are lies. Mm-hmm. Both have ill intent. And every aspect of this I've seen in real time. I've seen, their so-called smart bombs that hit civilian targets. Mm-hmm. And it is so awful. You have to imagine if you're hitting civilian targets, and maybe it's not on purpose, but they are collateral damage, you are exacting a toll and you are creating death and destruction. It should be such a solemn thing that you're forced to do it. We just went and did this with no provocation, with no reason. And there's no strategic or defense advantage to this. Yeah. So the people that did this, in my opinion, somebody like Pete, this is just devoid of any sort of Christian character.
That's right.
Or understanding of the real consequences of war. And I'm afraid for my country when I see stuff like this. This is complete arrogance.
Well, Senator John Kennedy apologized for it, and he's the only one, Democrat or Republican, who's apologized for it. Now, some people, some Democrats applauded him for apologizing for that. So we got it wrong. We didn't mean to do that. But that was not the response of Trump, not the response of War Pete. War Pete says, uses it as an occasion to boast about the fact we don't target civilians and our missiles are accurate and so forth. And so, that's his response. Couldn't possibly happen. Now, Scott Ritter, when he was talking about it, said, he is still haunted by one particular case like this that he was involved in. He said, we did our due diligence. We had really good reason to believe that was where some of Saddam Hussein's people were. But he said it turned out we were wrong, even with all the due diligence. He said, I live with that every day. I think about the consequences of that. But he said, what's happening with this? They've got so many targets. It's kind of like what they did in Minnesota. They said, we want X number of arrests every day. Just go out there and grab people. And he said, that leads to sloppy work. And yet, it might be something, it might involve this Anthropic Claude's AI, because they were using that in terms of targeting. And yet when you look at that, what Pete Hegseth wants to do is give even more discretion to AI. If AI made the mistake, or if it was old data that they had, or whatever it was, he's already shut down a lot of the oversight, and he wants to shut down even more oversight of this. And he has the audacity to say, we don't target civilians. They just kill everybody, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, we'll tell that to the people in Dresden and the firebombing of Tokyo.
That's right.
Me lie. We had you can go on and on if you know history, and that happens. That's all countries. This happens to in any sort of military power that's fighting a war. There's always some sort of darkness behind. Nobody gets out of that unscathed. But to fight this war, you have to. I have not seen a plausible explanation other than this is Operation Epstein Fury, that we're acting on behalf of a foreign government and doing their bidding. That's all I see.
Yeah.
This is not in the American interest.
It's despicable, and it goes against everything he promised his own voters. I don't understand why there hasn't been a bigger price, but there may be a bigger price to pay by the time they get to the election. I don't know. But so that was one person saying, 6,000 by mid-year in terms of gold, based on what he's looking at. You've got another analyst saying he thinks 10,000 by 2029. And he said, everybody talking about $10,000 gold just a year or two ago, everybody thought you were crazy. Now it doesn't look like crazy, does it? Because it spiked up to what, 5,300? Was that about 5,300 is what it got? Or something?
Yeah, over the first, at the weekend of the strike on the 28th, going into the first part of March, it was 5,300. And then there's some profit taking and some sell off. But we've crossed so many boundaries here, David. It's hard. We're not going to go back to the way that gold pricing used to be. And there's a few different times when 2011 is another great example of when they were able to suppress gold again by outwardly showing that there's going to be fiscal responsibility and that the Fed's not going to do massive quantitative easing and TARP and all the rest of that stuff and bail out these banks anymore. And people calmed down. Silver sold off, gold sold off. I don't think that'll happen again. I don't think that they can truly suppress either crude anymore or the gold markets. I don't think they can suppress. And so $10,000 gold, very plausible within this decade. And all we would need is just to continue down the path that we're on right now. I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
Gold was. I remember I went to the trading floor in August of 2024, and I was leaving, and I did a post about it. And I thought, this is really historic. There's $2,500 gold. Like that's so crazy. Because I've followed this for so many years, and I was like, 2,500. What a milestone. Well, here we are, and it's 2026, not quite 2 years later at all. And we're looking at talking about $10,000 gold at the end of the decade. I think completely plausible because in 6,000, definitely within striking distance. Just let this keep going.
Yeah.
You got to remember.
Oh, it will. That's the thing. It will. They have war gamed this out. We didn't plan this, but they did. They planned the response.
Absolutely. All they have to do, like Iran right now, and think about the oil exporting countries and those who rely, they're going to get a windfall profit from this. Of course, there's going to be massive downturns in other parts of the economy, but think of the amount of margin that these countries are going to be able to bring in, just the price of crude alone, and the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is blocked 90%, and that's where 20% of the outflows used to come from globally. So all bets are off.
It's 25% of all shipping that goes through the Strait of Hormuz, because there's a lot of other stuff that besides oil that goes through there: food, clothes, electronics, all the rest of the stuff. And so it is a massive, massive oversight to have the arrogance to think that we're going to take them out so quickly. We don't even have to worry about that. We don't even have to plan about that. Hatchcar61 said, please send a thank you to Tony and his crew. Received my Wolfpack package today. Stacking made easy. Well, I'll tell you who's not having an easy time of stacking, and that is Dubai. They said their gold flows have been crushed because it's not just the Strait of Hormuz. These are flights. You know, they're not putting the gold on a tanker. It's not that heavy, but they're putting them on airplanes, and there's so many problems with air flights being restricted as well. It's not just sea freight that's restricted; it's air freight that's restricted as well. And so it's created just like we see these tankers are all full and setting there in the water. They said that's a record amount. Never had that much oil sitting on the water in tankers. And they don't have any onshore storage facilities left with this stuff either. And so you're getting the same type of thing with gold, and it is stacking up. And so ironically, you're getting these places like in Dubai and other places where they are so heavily stocked with gold, they're getting desperate to move the inventory. They're discounting it there. And so that's kind of a crazy way to look at it. I got a question here, Tony, for you from Jason Barker, Knights of the Storm. He said, ask Tony what the sourcing challenges for silver are compared to a couple months ago. I hear it's getting really hard to get inventory.
It's getting harder and harder. And what's crazy about that is that there's two prongs to that. On one side, the refiners mostly aren't melting the silver, which that would help with supply. I'm not sure exactly why they aren't, but there's a lot of and I think maybe the price volatility is one reason, but a lot of the refiners are not melting. This rise in prices and then the turn back of those prices, the volatility has hurt a lot of people. It's hurt a lot of the supply chains, hurt a lot of dealers. And luckily, Wise Wolf, we came through that pretty much unscathed, but I have to pay attention to it. 24 I have to dream about it and where I'm going to land, because it's like it's all over the place. So my mind is constantly calculating what the next buy batch is going to be and what I'm going to have to sell off and what my percentages are. But I know for a fact it did hurt a lot. So it's really disrupted supply. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're living in an environment of hyperinflation, you know, like the Weimar Republic or what was the place? The African nation, Zimbabwe, I think they had.
Zimbabwe.
Yeah. And, you know, so we see that, and we've seen the tales of people. It was even happening in Argentina there, you know, people talking about how merchants would have bread on the shelf and they would have to constantly be changing the price throughout the day for this kind of stuff. That's the environment that you live in. I don't envy you at all at Wise Wolf.
It's difficult, but I'm glad that I have this opportunity. I think it's a good puzzle to solve, and I get to help a lot of people, because if you've been buying from Wolfpack for a while, like you've protected the purchasing power of your dollar, even with paying premiums, even with, you know, shipping and all the rest of the stuff that we have to charge. You've done well to protect yourself, and I think that will be the case for many years to come. If you're putting your dollars and fiat into metals, I think you still got a long way to go to protect yourself.
That's right. Yeah, there was a comment from a guy who worked for Goldman Sachs in terms of commodity things, and he says, we've always seen this type of thing in the past. Big movement out of soft stuff like technology stocks and things like that into the real stuff. And so we're at a switching point right now where that is happening again. The pendulum is moving again towards commodities like oil and base metals and precious metals and stuff like that, infrastructure. And you better believe there's going to be a lot of spending on infrastructure, because nothing chews up infrastructure like wars, especially now. They can target the infrastructure so precisely. And we've seen that already in Russia and Ukraine. And and already in the Gulf War, we've seen that. People, you know, we have the U.S. and Israel targeting the oil refineries of Iran, and they're returning the favor. So even if this war were to end tomorrow, the knock-on effects of this are going to be very, very long. It's going to be a big bottleneck of constipation from these tankers, just like we saw when Trump took the boot off of our necks with a lockdown. It created all kinds of train wreck and derailments with the supply chain. And it took a long time to iron that out. And a lot of the effects of things that happened back in 2020 have still not been ironed out. North American House Hippo, he says, for all of Trump's bluster, isn't it interesting that he hasn't taken credit for doubling the price of gold? Because that's a metric of failure for him, isn't it?
That's a good point. Well, the saddest part about all of this is it's so predictable.
Yeah.
We talk about this for years. Like, this is what, you have currency wars and trade wars, and then you have kinetic actual wars. You could have avoided all of this. So it was a choice. Like, it's the only thing we
He's
learned
more
from
interested in who's wearing Florsheim shoes. And what is the size of your foot? That's how I size up a man, right?
Why do we have to have Trump? Was Nero not available? Could we not get that guy? Burn the whole thing down. I think
he's more like Caligula,
He's very much, yes, because of very much on the spectrum of that. It's really sad to watch, David. And who knows where all these prices are going to go? I mean, I think the most something that sticks with me, and when I look at prices or price predictions for metals, or it could be Bitcoin too, is just how small the markets are. I mean, gold's like a $20 trillion market cap, but the world is like a $600 trillion asset pool. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you're talking about just a small amount goes into gold. And I think silver's like $3 trillion market cap? Something, maybe 4. It's a small thing. Bitcoin's like 2. Compared to the hundreds of trillions that are supposedly floating in currencies and sovereign wealth funds and bonds and real estate and other things around the world. And when that stuff, and you're right, the Goldman Sachs trader is right, volatility and then uncertainty, all those funds are going to migrate into something else that's more stable, that you can count. I mean, and you don't know where tech's going to go. You don't know where any of these, like even medical or any of these stuff is going to go.
Well, even tech is going to be affected by this stuff. They were saying, the Gulf states have been big purchasers of this stuff, and they were ramping up data centers, not just buying NVIDIA chips, but, entire data centers that they were in the process of budgeting to build. That ain't going to happen now, because they're going to have to, they got other things on their plate that's going to happen. It's amazing when you look at how complicated all this stuff is. And it just comes from the hubris of central planners who think that they understand the way the world works. Nobody does. It's like Leonard and what's the guy's name that did iPencil? Leonard Reed, was that his name? Yeah. And, he talks about how nobody's planning a pencil, but it's all this kind of invisible hand of Adam Smith type of thing. And that's the problem. Trump and his planners have shown that they don't understand the first thing about how the global economy works. If he did, he wouldn't be trying to throw a monkey wrench into it all the time with his egonomics of tariffs. I don't like this guy over here who's the leader of that country, so I'm going to put 100% tariff on him tomorrow. That type of thing. It's stupid. It's beyond stupid. A Syrian girl says, with the projected prices of crude oil, I think a lot of people are in danger of dying in the dark and cold next winter. Yeah, and of going broke as well. In the UK, one guy was talking about how liquid natural gas is something they've been pushing them toward. They said, we don't want to have coal and we don't want to have oil. They're too dirty, so you're going to burn gas. Well, now they don't have the gas. And they said they're going to pay a lot more for it. That's why Lindsey Graham is rubbing his hands together like a conniving fly and saying, we're going to get rich. His military industrial people are going to get rich replacing the bombs, and then they're going to get rich, he thinks, because they're going to control 31% of the world's oil, but you can't get it out. If Iran blows up the refineries and their ports and the oil wells, oil fields and things like that, how are they going to get to that oil? They can't get to the oil in Venezuela. So, all of this stuff is stupid. Yeah, it's stupid.
I mean, what's good of being rich if the world's on fire? I mean, really, do they think these things through? I don't know. What we didn't talk about?
And they have their finger on the button as well.
That's exactly right. And really, that's terrifying. And people like Lindsey Graham that actually have power.
Yeah.
And I think we get the leaders that we deserve, I think, at some level, like the American people.
What I deserve to get him.
Like South Carolina was like, well, he does support Israel. And, that's what you get, folks. You get Lindsey Graham. We didn't talk about, David, there was one thing in all of the news headlines that I thought, we better highlight that. And that was the fact that BlackRock and Blackstone stopped the outflows of some of their private equity funds, and they're not the only ones. There's others, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley.
Yeah, the
some others
contagion is
they've
spreading.
capped.
I think it's up like 3 or 4 of them now that have put
Yes.
limits on that.
That is something to watch. That didn't again. That's another thing that didn't make a lot of headlines, just in the circles that you and I pay attention to, and some of the things. But I think that is a good indicator of
That's huge. Huge.
possible credit crunch and liquidity issues, bank runs. I've had some people text me, ask me about banking, and I'm very cautious.
Yeah.
Looking at how much liquidity you've got in a bank at any given time. Always be careful of that.
And we look at the private equity state. I just yesterday I looked it up because I asked Gerald Slinty on air. I said, "So is this tied together with commercial real estate?" He goes, "Oh yeah, oh yeah." And I looked it up after the show, and it's like that's a huge part of this private equity fund. The things that Gerald Slinty has been talking about at Trend Journal for a long time. The commercial real estate bust because of what happened with 2020 and what Trump did, his first round of chaos and control. And so the this ongoing very slow moving juggernaut of disaster is starting to now manifest itself through some of these hedge funds that are there. Absolutely. A citizen of America says, "I remember not too long ago we had a flash flood, and a bunch of our young schoolgirls were washed away at Camp Mystic. And I thought to myself, how horrible. And the nation grieved. But somehow they can't be horrified by this, and they can't accept any responsibility for it either." And that's the key thing, isn't it? That's one of the first things that happens in war. First casualty is truth, but it's also the second casualty is the humanity of the people in the other country. We treat them as some kind of subhuman. They're on a different team now. They've got a different flag and different leaders, so they're no longer human. And we don't regard them as human. And that's a good example of it, I think.
Yeah, and imagine how horrifying it is years later when you realize they probably weren't the enemy to begin with.
That's right.
Even if you did dehumanize them, and then we learn about there wasn't any dancing Iranians that I remember from my research on 9/11. So there's so many lies, but you're so right. The first casualty of war is the truth, and then your humanity goes as well, and then you join into the ceremony of things, and that's why I want to be 1,000 miles away from whatever this is. Just karmically, spiritually, don't want any of it on me.
That's right.
And I don't want anybody in my audience, anybody listens to this, to be pulled in at all from this propaganda. It's so predictable what's going on, but it's also really sad.
We get in these seasons of war, and this bloodlust kicks in for everybody, which is truly insane. And when you look at it, the lies that this all began with, completely ignoring our history with Iran. I could understand why Iran would think of us as Satan. When you look at the fact that we've been coming after them for 73 years, I mean, we don't leave them alone. We overthrow their government. We put in a king with a horrific secret police that arrests, tortures, and kills people, and trained by the CIA and Mossad. They suffer under that for a couple of decades. Then we start pushing in Planned Parenthood and all of our disgusting values into the country. And then when they overreact in both of these ways and they come in with a very strict Islamic government, what we do is we ally ourselves with Saddam Hussein and try to wipe them off the face of the map. When that doesn't work, we do the kind of stuff we're doing now. We assassinate one leader after the other, and then we attack the country. It's like, what's going on? All of this is being done from our perspective and not from their perspective. But the American public looks at it, and all they know about with Iran is, they kidnapped people at our embassy. And so they were the aggressor. They kidnapped and held these people. And if you understand the history behind Iran-Contra, just how involved Ronald Reagan's campaign manager, Bill Casey, Wild Bill Casey from the OSS, who was one of the founders of the CIA, and how he told them, cutting deals with these people that were supposed to be unapproachable. We'll give you spare parts. You give us money, and we set up a secret war, because that's what they always want. We get black market money for a secret war. We sell you parts so that you can kill people and oppress your own people. It's just insane when you look at it.
I thought it was funny. Somebody played clips of Condoleezza Rice, and she was saying, well, Iran has been our enemies, for 47 years. And I thought, well, except for some brief interludes, like when you dealt with hostages for missiles, whether in
Yeah.
Iran Contra, and things like that, or the flight that supposedly George H.W. Bush took over there secretly to meet with the Iranian officials to hold the hostages a little longer till after the inauguration of Reagan.
That's right.
There's all sorts of history that goes back.
Yeah, it wasn't enough to win the election. You had to keep the hostages there until the day that Reagan is sworn in. Yeah, absolutely. And I saw one of these Iranian officials, and he teaches school now. He wasn't really in the government, but he was very much a part of the regime. And he said, I tell this to the younger Iranians, and they don't believe me how evil America is. And he says, and he was so convinced. And I think what happened with that Iranian jetliner, I think that was an accident. I think it was exactly the same kind of accident that took down Flight 800. It's just that they couldn't cover it up when it happened to a foreign country's commercial airliner. But he thought that was deliberate because that's his opinion of America. And I can understand that. But, when we get upset with the Iranians because they don't like their government or whatever, their government leaders, just understand what the rest of the world might think about Americans and how this national security state has undermined the security and the safety and the peace and the prosperity of you and your family, because these chickens are going to come home to roost. And you talk about terrorist attacks. I don't think that this FBI document is credible, but I think the U.S. government is perfectly capable of doing a terrorist attack, false flag, and I think there's people around the world that would love to do this and not have it be a false flag because of what we've done to people for so long. And we're just making this country so dangerous by the actions of the CIA and the Pentagon.
Multi-factored danger in there, because people, once there is a false flag or attack, they will fall in line, and it will. And people like us that will see through it, we might have a little while right now where things are like, oh, I agree with David, or I agree with Tony, because we're not real popular when it comes to,
That's right.
Analysis, because people want to have their delusions, and it'll be even harder for us, especially if there's some sort of galvanizing thing or an attack. God forbid. It's such an awful thing. I don't want any of this. We don't have time for it, and I'm afraid of what it'll usher in. But
I've already seen some of that. When it comes to the border, you look at what's happening in Minnesota, what the Trump regime was doing, and I said, I've seen where this is headed for the longest time. Alex did documentary after documentary about the police state, did 4 of them, and yet when it's being done by Trump, everybody cheers it. When it's being done to throw out these dirty foreigners that came in here, then everybody's for it. And again, that's the dehumanizing of this. Well, they're not citizens, so I don't care what happens to them. It's like, well, we don't have citizens' rights as much as we got human rights in the Declaration of Independence. It's because we are created in the image of God, not because somebody in Washington has said that you're a citizen or not. And if we allow them to get rid of our humanity, if we allow them to get rid of the humanity of people who have committed a crime and came into this country illegally, but they still get due process, and it still needs to be proportional. And it is not just the act of coming into the country illegally does not make them a rapist and a murderer. I mean, there are rapists and murderers who came in as well, but even they get due process to make sure we got the right people. And when you throw that stuff out the window and you throw the humanity of people out the window, that is an incredibly dangerous thing. And I've seen that with this Trump administration, whether you're talking about ICE or whether you're talking about Venezuela and the machine gunning of people in the water who are shipwrecked. I'm disgusted with this country. And I don't want to have, like you're talking about, I want to stay 1,000 miles away from that. I want to disassociate myself from that. And I want Americans to disassociate themselves from that. It bothers me when I see people cheering it and saying, I voted for this.
Well, I think even with a false flag, the prices of things and the economic consequences will override that. I think people will get tired on it a long enough time. I think they're going to get tired of it real soon, by the way. This is not going away, and you're about to see the midterms and everything else. I don't think this is going to be popular. And perhaps the Trump administration knew this already, and they're just doing it because they're acting on behalf of a foreign nation. There's no upside for them here in the short run or the long run. I don't know if there's any other way to explain it. But unfortunately, we're tied to this, and we're along for the ride. So, in my estimation, to looking at from what I do in the precious metals business is there's probably never been a better time to get out of the system and into something that is yours without counterparty risk. Not to do an infomercial, but that's
yeah. Well, I agree with
it's a good
that.
time to do that.
And I look at this, and it's the same kind of stuff that when Trump pumped and dumped crypto, right? I was saying at the time, I said it's on sale. Get your gold and silver, right? And so I see this as another one with them manipulating the market to try to keep it from spiking really huge with both gold and oil. Now is the time to try to protect yourself. And, there are some measures that you can do to protect yourself and your family. And from a financial standpoint, I don't think you can do better in terms of protection than gold. Nothing is perfect, and nothing's going to go straight up and to the right always, but it is, it's averaging that out over a period of time and just trying to stick with what is real. I think that's the most important thing. Well, Tony, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about what's going on at Wise Wolf?
Well, I'm going to be traveling next week, so I won't be able to do the show. But and I always love coming on and talking to you. It's it seems like every time there's just we're experiencing some new, fresher totalitarian tiptoe of something into the dystopia. So
you live in interesting times, right?
I'll miss next week because I'm going to be traveling, and I'm working on a new podcast episode, so I'll be out of my normal jurisdiction. But yeah, just we're doing everything we can. The crew is great, and I'm sourcing as much product as I can. I put out an email about a week or so ago, just letting people know, like, we're trying to get some of the smaller silver items. I've ordered stuff. We had some stuff lost in the mail. There's always something going on with this business, but we're excited about some of the cool stuff coming out in Wolfpack. So appreciate everybody who's stuck with us.
Well, that's great. You're talking about a podcast episode. Do you have a podcast episode today after this show?
I do. I'm going to do the Arterburn radio transmission once a week on Thursdays, 11 a.m. Central Time. Go find me on at Tony Arterburn on X and America Unplugged channel over on Rumble. We'll be live here in about 40 minutes.
Right after this show. Well, thank you very much, Tony. Again, Wise Wolf Gold and Silver, and you can get to Tony through davidknight.gold and let him know that you're coming through us. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.